Today we have a very special guest, somebody who's respected for the right reasons, somebody who does the right thing for the right reason in the right manner, which is what Stephen Covey said. Somebody who in the banking circle and the business and economy ecosystem is respected. He's built a bank, grown a bank, and continues to do so in the current environment. Let me welcome Mr. Shyam Sreenivasan, who's the MD and CEO of the Federal Bank. Welcome, Mr. Sreenivasan, to the BW Dialogue.
Thanks, Annurag. Thank you very much. Look forward to the session.
Yes. First of all, Mr. Sreenivasan, how have been the last 150 days for you? What has kept you personally and professionally busy?
Good question. In our case, it's actually 200 days because the state of Kerala discovered the first incidents in Jan 30th, 2020. So we are really counting 200 days now. The usual stuff, Anurag. Initially, it was all denial, believing that it's for somebody else, it's for us, and then slowly it started creeping on us. So we had to be on the double. And since none of us had anything like this ever planned out, a lot of action in the initial phase was around getting stability in the business of the bank. So I think the first few days, few weeks, I would say, were extremely stressful from a point of view of ensuring continuity of business and safety of people. By God's grace, I think that part went quite well. And we settled in, not necessarily by desire, but into a new order. The first 30, 40 days, it was quite a revelation. The ability to switch from our conventional way of working to a virtual way of working and working from anywhere, not necessarily home, was really trial by fire. The first thing our team did, they did a spectacular job of actually putting together about 75 of our colleagues into our training center, literally locking them up and insulating from the rest of the world. So they were living everything there. Food was being delivered. 75 officers, by their own volition, became sort of in-house mates and virtually like a jail colleagues. So they really slaved it out, kept the system running, while the rest of the bank sort of got itself rearranged to a new order. Mercifully, by end April, that order fell into place. People started getting organized. But then after that, the incidence of that, particularly in the markets like Mumbai and Delhi, it started increasing. So we were reacting to a lot of these developments. Through this period, teams have held out well. The biggest challenge for any of us has been around how do we give leadership for a relatively unknown kind of event. It's not like we have practiced it before and we knew what to do. So we're all reacting to the situation. What has been different for me personally, I think two things. One is a new discipline, which is good, but a lot of disappointment, which is not something that we had visualized would happen. So I think the disciplines have been both work. I used to travel like maybe 12, 13, 14 days a month, and now it is 0. So I've got more time to do the stuff that I had never done before. So that's given a new sort of rhythm and discipline, but equally many of the initiatives we wanted to do to make sure that the bank's journey keeps going. One has to be more mindful that those have to be in the back burner for a while. So it's been a very different environment, but my greatest fear is this should not lull people to believing that this level of lower activity is going to be the new order. So we have to keep the energy going. On balance, the bank has done reasonably well through this period. That's satisfying, but far from where we would all like it to be. And the uncertainty prevails. Leading through this uncertainty has been quite a challenge, but I think it's a different environment we're all getting used to. Long answer, but that's how it is.
Beautiful. You made it sound like it happened in a sequence. It was all planned, but you're really right. This is a new abnormal. This is not the new normal. And I hope this is never the normal.
Correct. You're right.
You take away the right things from it. But I want to shift my focus to the business and economy. A lot of experts say that it is a liquidity crisis, but a lot of experts also say this is a credit crisis. Give us your view on this.
See, I think before we declare liquidity crisis or credit crisis, I think bigger issue is a health and a confidence crisis. That is what is driving all the outcomes that we are facing, right? Liquidity and credit are outcomes, consequences. If health is reassured and people gain confidence, this will change in like that. So I would say we must, everybody, and not anyone in particular, are all firstly nervous about the outcomes on health and how do we keep ourselves, our families, our friends and well-wishers and our businesses going in a fairly, sort of even keel, that we can give the outcomes that we had promised to originally, right? When we set out, let's say in March, including you or any of our businesses, we had business plans. Now on the go, you're reworking those plans. Liquidity actually, Anurag, has not been an issue. You probably know better than me. The market is flush with money. But credit is a function of demand. I mean, if people are not buying cars and homes and setting up new projects and building new business models, certainly to some extent credit demand is muted. And equally, banks and financial institutions would be nervous about extending further credit, because if you don't know your ability to generate cash flows, you're not going to be that courageous to lend. So I think before we get into a liquidity or credit crisis, no. I think the regulators have done a spectacular job. You're sitting on enough and more money. The world is dumping money everywhere. That's why you're seeing the stock market behave independent of the actual sort of underlying economy. But I think the issue of credit crisis is born out of confidence, which is born out of the nervousness about health. As that gets addressed, I am quite sure this will come back. So yes, in some form, this 6, 7, 8 months, whatever that period is a period of sort of pullback or stress that is unfortunate. But foremost is getting the confidence back, and that is dependent on not that I'm saying things new, like the vaccine discovery, the tapering off of the health issues, the formation of antibodies, all the right things, and it's going to be the most crucial characteristic over the next 150 days, whatever it takes to get the vaccine up and running. So that's where it is. I would say liquidity, credit is not the issue. Liquidity certainly not. Credit, yes, there's a challenge, but it's born out of a more basic issue of health and confidence.
Thank you so much. You're so right. It's a healthcare issue which is dragging the sentiment down. People have a real fear, and Indians are known for saving. When they believe that there is a rainy day, they'd save. And with jobs being impacted, people having uncertainty, so they're holding up. I think that's what's happening. Coming to another aspect, you referred to the fact that the stock markets don't really mirror the real market, or the Fleet Street doesn't really mirror the real street, if we may say so. Tell us, you already alluded to why there is an exuberance on the stock markets, but give a sense of where are we headed with the stock market. Nobody can be 100% sure, but just give us a view.
I think I am the last man to comment on it. As a banker, I can only give you the insights, but as a practicing banker, but it's clear that the markets tend to be ahead of the real economy. The fall was precipitous, so has been the rise, right? But I equally, if you take not just the period of the lockdown and the COVID crisis, but you wind back 12, 18 months, it was, the economy had its own set of issues. So you did see some polarization, right? The large, big ticket, well-run, well-respected, big names were concentrated and money was flowing into that. So there was a run-up in those stocks. And then you saw a period where virtually in a 45-day period, almost 45% of the value crashed. And then you saw some semblance of coming back of businesses and life. You start climbing back. So I think the market probably leads the underlying developments and is probably 45-50 days ahead of the ground realities. So this up and down of the market, I would only explain by the fact that it's indicative of probably the confidence coming in, liquidity pouring in, courage around investing in strong franchises, which are certainly going to survive the onslaught. So you have to park your money in something. The next few months may behave differently, because if you see this on and off of lockdowns, localized lockdowns, and maybe some of the Western economies getting a little tighter, these things may influence the market behavior maybe differently over the next 3-4 months. But the short point is, I think markets behave ahead of what is likely to happen. It's probably baking in that. And second is, there is a concentration of enthusiasm around the so-called best names which will survive any onslaught. And initially it starts with the sort of the large cap, and then it moves to mid and small. So I think over the next months, it may be the mid and small caps which are going to last. The better ones will probably enjoy the run up, because they're the ones who've fallen maybe like 50%, 60% from their peaks. So but these are just educated guesses. Most of us have to do the job, and the market will take care of it as well, is how I want to believe.
Thank you. That's a perfect answer. And it is representative of what's happening in the economy. Now, every crisis has a silver lining. As they say that,
never waste
opportunities come dressed as problems. Though this pandemic is really, unprecedented in the way it is, and the world VUCA was possibly invented for this, right? Now tell us, what are the silver linings? What are the positives? I'm very mindful of the loss of life and loss of livelihoods that a lot of people had. But still, as a business, what are the positives that you can see in this dark cloud?
I think the one thing that all of us would sort of unhesitatingly agree is this whole virtual digital development is sort of accelerated by, catalyzed by a magnitude multiplier of maybe 10, 15 times, which we had visualized. I couldn't think of us sitting here, you in Delhi, having a very sort of constructive conversation in the peak of a working day through this media. We would have had to set an appointment, then you fly into Mumbai, I fly into Mumbai, we find a lunch table. This is just crashed timelines by an order of magnitude. Expand that or extend that into the business day to day. I think digital developments have been crunched by many years, I would say. So that's an upside. But as a fallout of that, the fallout of that upside is the cost structures can be revisited quite materially. So efficiencies kicking in, ability to work from anywhere, the whole digital evolution, irrespective of industry, has been, I would say, catalyzed by 3, 4, 5 years or maybe even higher. So that's one development, and it's agnostic to wealth or economic status or age. An elderly gentleman like my dad is as familiar with technology as a young digital slave, so to say. So I think technology has played its part in digital acceleration. The second I think that's developed is the concept of what I now call sachetization. Everything is getting into ready-to-use small packets, even banking products. So I think there is a development that is taking place, which may trigger the equivalent of what happened in the sachet era a few years ago, or maybe like 20, 30 years ago, when shampoos came in sachets. Now you'll start seeing everything coming. You and I may not be shampoo favorites, but shampoos equivalent lessons that you can learn is sachetization. And the third is at the harder end of the spectrum is a huge amount what I call as bespokeization. Very personalized stuff is happening. So I think these three themes are emerging: digital, sachet, and book. And each of them have their own, I would say, opportunity to exploit depending on which business you are in. Like you pointed out, health, livelihood, crash of business, salary, job losses are all unfortunate outcomes. But the ones that are a little more privileged are able to survive this and reset themselves to this, like you pointed out, this very different normal. And when we all come out of it, I think what will stay is certainly this work from anywhere, digital, a new consumption pattern, some degree of, I think, frugal behavior will kick in. And at a psychological and an emotional level, I think a big change is empathy has increased for all of us, which is not getting noticed. I think we are becoming unfortunate learning, but I think good outcome for human race is becoming more empathetic and I think more caring. The reach out has increased. This is my personal sense, but I do think it's happening.
You're right. And one of the things is the leaders doing self-care. And I keep saying, Mr. Sreenivasan, that we've become a 3C economy, more collaborative, more compassionate, and more contactless. So you saying the same, and it is serendipity. Last week I said that there is sashaization of everything, and you are saying that. So
okay. I didn't hear you that. Okay, nice.
Yeah. Now I want to focus a little bit on, as I said, no organization can be separated from a leader. Leadership makes a difference. The leader makes a difference. First of all, what have been your top lessons from this crisis? You just shared the positives that are there in this dark cloud, but tell us, what are your top leadership lessons and how have they impacted your leadership style? I know that you are very fond of sports, right? And when you write blogs, when you communicate, when you come up with acronyms, sports is something that impacts you. So tell us your top leadership lessons and how has it impacted your leadership style?
I think the one thing for us, and I don't say it's me, but I think as a system, our reasonably well-crafted business continuity plans have meant nothing. So the ability to literally work on your feet or plan on the go and act on the go has been challenged by an order of magnitude which we had not visualized. I mean, I told you we had all our best BCPs, and for those of us who know, 2 years back, our head office was hit by the worst ever floods in 100 years. Even my home was washed out, completely washed out. So we had actually been out of home for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and to live and reset the home. We thought that was the worst we'd experienced, and we had prepared our BCPs to cover for that. Little did we know that something of this nature, an unknown visitor, would come and spoil our life in a manner that none. So I think the first and foremost is the ability to react in a manner that you can continue to run businesses in life while this mega event has happened. And I think that's been one big learning for all of us. And I'm not saying we've all learned it, but we are still learning. But the ability to adapt and literally, within a flash of a second. So that's been one big
agility.
Agility, the right word. I think the ability to be agile and adapt in literally a few seconds, and as a team, not just an individual. We've seen so many of our seniors literally materially shift their style of operations. I usually in the mid to late 50s, you tend to become very stubborn in your ways of work, and you've done it for 20-30 years and you get so hooked onto it. Youngsters usually find it easy to adapt. I am just surprised on the flip of an eye, our people have all moved to a new working style like we already did it, right? So it's been one big learning, and I think that's a stark one. In terms of the one thing that I missed and I learned, like you mentioned, I'm an avid now sport watcher, not a sportsman, but a sport watcher, and I miss live sport. So there's so much that you learn from live sport, right? Other than just being sheer entertainment, there's so much to learn. Certainly that's unfortunately not been there, but I think our life has become a sport now, right? Because you're facing so many unprecedented googlies, every day something new twist. And it's not in just one geography. It's you're sitting in one office, you hear that an office in Meerut has been closed down because some employee was tested positive or somebody was positive, visited the branch, and that branch has to be shut. So your processes are designed for some kind of regular working. Now you are redesigning processes for the uncertain. So I think our teams are ability to visualize what happens in a location which is not under your nose, and make that change on the go and keep the system running is a skill that none of us, maybe we had it latently, we never brought it to the fore. This period has helped us bring it. So I think the biggest learning is dealing with ambiguity, uncertainty, and keeping the system going and ensuring you're giving people confidence all the time and keeping that smile, even though it's a nervous smile all the time.
Thank you so much. As I said, over the last few years, you've been known to, write your blog, to communicate very often with your colleagues, also come up with new concepts, ideas, and then kind of funnel them into an acronym. Let me take some of those. For example, you came up with DFHC, digital at the fore, human at the core. 4D, dominate our home market, double our operating run rate in our chosen market, develop impactful digital solutions, delight our stakeholders. P2P, P2D, presence to prominence, prominence to dominance. Go micro, mobile, map the millions, intensity, integrate, credit rigor, recovery, urban, and operational excellence. Then you came up with MMXV,
Triple I.
So tell us, give us insights into these acronyms and explain the philosophy. Some of them are, when you read them out, you kind of get a sense. But take us deeply into them.
Thanks, Annurag. I think one of my guys has fed you a lot of content. I didn't realize that. I think my personal philosophy is I'm not the most cleverest of people. So I usually like to believe that keeping things simple work. So I've discovered over the years that when you try to give simple acronyms that people can relate to, the themes you want to share become more vivid. So, and it's usually topical. It's not something that you can cast in stone. So if you're talking to a bunch of people and yesterday Rahul Dravid had scored a century or Virat Kohli had scored a century, and if it tells you something, you try and bring that into the conversation. So the relatability increases, so hopefully the acceptance of that message increases. So I just, over the years, I've tried acronyms as a way to bring my messages to our teams, and hopefully relatability increases. So the ones that we are quite excited by is this whole theme of digital at the fore, human at the core. And it's a theme that we believe applies to our bank and maybe for a larger audience, only because both are important. We do want to use the best of technology, make it as self-service, contactless, as convenient. But at the heart of it, you want to make sure that the other person feels wanted, cared, personalized. So I think when we say DFHC, now hopefully every employee in the bank sort of understands that we want to be at both ends of the spectrum. We want to be as digital as possible, as human as possible. And if we get that marriage going well, we can be building the promise that we want to be. So I think in my humble judgment, we've tried to use the whole theme of acronyms which are relevant for the situation, and try and build messages around that, which sticks to the minds of people. And usually it's 4 letters, at best 5 letters. Beyond that, it becomes difficult to digest. And so, so far I think it's worked. At least the people who work with us try and digest it. I do write to the entire bank every week with some theme, which is usually around what has happened the past week in the bank or in the industry or in the environment, and try and bring it to what is relevant for us as employees of the bank to deliver the outcomes we promised to outcome for our shareholders. Using acronyms or some kind of messaging, mnemonic helps. So yeah, let's see. I hope it works.
It does, and they are very relevant in today's time. Possibly again, they are more relevant than they were earlier, right? Now coming to, every business has to be a technology business. Whatever business you are in, earlier you would say technology is an enabler, but I think today technology is a driver. Of course, the rules of the business stay the same. Banking's rules stay the same. But banking needs to become a fintech business. Tomorrow there may be digital players who don't have a bank in the way you have. How will you think banks do vis-a-vis these new age fintech players who may try to go to urban? You have urban as a theme, and those are markets that are, so to say, underserved, right? So how does a traditional bank, which is using technology very well, take on these fintech players who have a blue sky thinking, a blue ocean thinking, and they have no paucity of capital, so they can continue to plow for a long period of time to acquire customers and to build products that are more innovative? What do you have to say about that, Mr. Sreenivasan?
No, I think the fundamental issue here, in many ways, they are not competition at all, they're collaboration. I'll give you a live example. In fact, 2-3. About 2 years back, we tied up with a fintech. As you know, in the non-NBFC space, Federal Bank, and I include even giant banks like SBI and HDFC, we are the largest gold loan bank, largest by a mile, even bigger than our best, very renowned competitors like HDFC and SBI and ICICI, all these very giant banks. We are the largest gold loan bank. So as a construct, we do a lot of good work on the gold loan as a bank. And that's in the current times, that's a big agenda for us as a bank. Do more of it. It's safe. It's valuable for us, valuable for the customers. It's a win-win. So about a couple of years back, we built out a fintech partner exclusively for us, and slowly they are looking at other bank partnership, which is fine. So their business model, and we were literally a guinea pig bank for them to construct their delivery using technology and doing gold loan at the client's home or work. So instead of you walking into a branch to do your gold loan, I come to you wherever you are and do it digitally. And the technology, fintech, capital, distribution, reach, and the bank skills married. And that's now gaining momentum. A similar model for microfinance, where instead of a small group of joint lending group, women or whatever, we go to them using technology, using a fintech partner. Or in a month from now, we will launch our first neobank, again by a very smart bunch of guys who are looking at a branchless banking. So we are in some form partnering with many of them. And I believe, all good banks and all good institutions will do this. So they don't conflict or compete. Yes, sometimes your competitor is a collaborator and the collaborator is a competitor. It happens. But the ecosystem just expands because you're able to do this. And I think we've done a reasonable job of it. And for sure, it will get scaled up. For sure, it will get copied. For sure, it will be competed for. But it just expands the space. And I think you mentioned urban. We by design, 70% of our network is in semi-urban rural. So reaching out to them using all the contemporary technology and thankfully with 4G, 5G, literally geofying India, you are able to go out and reach out to many more people. And this whole pandemic has only forced the acceleration of it. So I think fintech by itself was originally something that looked like it would eat into businesses, but now it's looking like a great enabler for either side.
Fantastic. And possibly a new mindset, at least with the new offerings and as you said, realizing the sachization of banking and gold. You found your sweet spot, and last 5 months, if there's something that is appreciated, that is gold. So really, it's a very good position to be in. And with Indians' traditional love for gold, I don't think that's going away anywhere. So it's a very safe spot to be in. It's a very good spot to be in. Now let me change gears. The $1 trillion question is, when will the Indian economy come back to its full glory? Of course, there are variables like when COVID will go away, when the vaccine will come. But in your assessment, when do you think the economy will come back in its full roar? And when you see the demand coming around Diwali, do you see it staying for a while and building on that? Or do you see it as a temporary kind of improvement and then going back to the tepid environment we have?
I think firstly, the near-term pickup could be pent up. Just the fact that nobody has had occasions and avenues to spend, and festive season is usually an opportunity. So one believes that starting, say, tomorrow's Ganesh Puja, and starting then typically between now to Diwali and Christmas, maybe there will be a fair amount of pickup, and that's a welcome sign. But you can't divorce the reality of post the vaccine coming in and getting administered. Only then confidence will come back to a larger level. Certainly a lot of efforts by everybody, administration, industry, people in general is happening. But the overhang of the, will I be the next victim is certainly not going to go away, right? I mean, all of us we of course are a little privileged. We're sitting in our home or office in great comfort and having this conversation, but there are many frontline workers who are, literally facing the heat as we say. So to that extent, the comeback in full bloom could be a while. There will be occasions between now and year end where there will be some pickup. Now, in the journey of this pickup, one hopes that this tapers off, some good news about the vaccine comes in, antibodies are forming. We keep hearing the Sero survey in Delhi showing, 1 out of 4 or more people are, forming antibodies. Now, if it were true, and many more people feel that much more confident to step out, the public transport opens up. So there's a lot of ifs. But the short point, near term, you can see pickup. The longer term is dependent on the developments in the health and vaccine related area, and thereby the confidence. But we have to believe that it's an unfortunate pause button, not a stop. It's not a full stop. It's a comma on the growth of India. So you have to believe that 12 months out or 18 months out, we will reset and start afresh, and maybe hit more sixes than we had visualized to hit in the in this period. So you just have to rough it out. As I use, since you mentioned I use my acronyms, but I just borrowed a line from one of the Greek lines, which is say "Meneto Martima," which means stay the course. Just play this rough period like Rahul Dravid does. Just put your head down and play it out, and then hopefully a year out you will see things picking up quite nicely.
Fantastic. I want to ask you about one more aspect. That is, when you deal with entrepreneurs as a bank, as an entrepreneur yourself, have you seen a change in the mindset of Indian entrepreneurs, both established and the new one? And if there is a change, what is the change you've seen in the last 5 years in the kind of approach they are taking, in the kind of, way forward that they see for themselves?
I think some changes were forced driven by the environment. They've had not much choice. Just the need to be that much more disciplined and digital. They've had no choice. They've just migrated, probably unconsciously or subconsciously, but it's almost forced upon them. The second, of course, some of them have seen confidence being rattled, and their ability to be as sort of with full gusto has been challenged. So they've taken a step back and looked at what do they need to do in this environment. Some of them are very devoted to their workforce. They don't want to let their workforce suffer because they need them back, and they're committed to their workforce. So I think that has been a very strenuous period for many businessmen. I mean, just this week, one of our very leading customers put out a very touching video, a 9-minute appeal, so to say. And he's spoken about the travails of the lockdown and how somehow the lockdown has to be lifted, otherwise you're heading for there's an emotional appeal. So you can tell that people are facing the challenges in underlying.
There is an unsaid grief. There is an unsaid grief.
And he said it. So actually, in his case, it's a said grief. But I think that represents some concerns people have. Some express, some just hold on to it. But the short point is people have readjusted to the fact that you have to go more digital, be extremely cost efficient, be more nimble in getting things done, yet protect your people. And which means cling on to your existing clients and serve them well, and take some near-term sacrifices in the belief that it'll all correct itself over a longer period of time. And somehow I believe all of us, including me and I guess you guys too, are still keeping our optimism going, which is a great thing. To my mind, either the jugaad of India or just the human desire to stay afloat. I haven't seen people crestfallen, putting their head down and just digging a hole and going away, which is a great thing for all of us as people.
Yeah, we as a nation have shown resilience. We as a community have shown resilience. And somewhere we believe in a higher purpose, and we believe that this shall too pass. So I think you're right. I am also very pleasantly surprised by the kind of resolve people have shown and the kind of responsiveness they've shown. This brings me to my next question. How would you rate the response from the government, from the central government, from the state government? And, different states have to deal with it in a different way. And if I dare say, it's been a patchwork because, different times there are lockdowns because different states are peaking at different times. So tell us, how has been the government's response? What did they do well? What can be done better?
I think the first and foremost, keeping the system liquid has been one very good outcome. Second, although it's been patchy, in some form, reaching out and giving extra credit to the more needy part of the country, though in some instances it could have been done earlier, has been quite welcome. These are two distinctly good things that have happened. Yes, we all know the challenges that are the migrant workforce faced, and could it have been done better? So unfortunately, because there was no blueprint, because there was no textbook to say how this should be done, all of us, irrespective of our state of life or whether we are in politics or in government or in business, have all reacted. Some have reacted better, some have reacted a little delayed. So it's just it's a degree of magnitude that, and I don't want to get into judgment of that. Yes, some things could have gone better, but what is more likely or more necessary at this point in time, having lived through this pandemic for 5 months, and is certainly I think the supply side has been dealt with reasonably okay. How do you create demand? And like I said right at the beginning, is the demand is a function of confidence, right? The moment there's money in your pocket, you behave very differently than that your next paycheck is doubtful. So I would think creation of demand, and there I am mindful that there are limitations. Nobody has a deep pocket that we can just keep throwing money out. So some sensible mechanisms have to be thought through. Like you pointed out, India is sitting in 25,000 tons of gold and more. We have to get that monetized, bring it out, and make people, take credit against it, do whatever that the best minds can come up with that, and give the much needed near-term, short-term breaks on tax, service tax and stuff like that, just to keep the oil of the the wheels running. And you will 3-4 months, once that sort of gets cranked up, the flywheel gets connected, then you're talking of a different story. So what can be done is demand creation. There are many sharp minds who have identified a few solutions of what can be done. We are all mindful of the limitations that we have as a nation. So within that constraint, if economy were to be sort of cranked back up, and it again varies by geography. In some areas it may be more possible because the recovery rates are higher. It's not going to be one universal stroke across all states or across all pin codes. So it has to be very variable, triggered at that point with local administration stepping in. So that's where, like point you mentioned, the coordination has to be much more intense. So having lived through 5-6 months of this very adverse environment, if these were to come alive very fast, the comeback can be much faster.
Fantastic. Thank you for being solution-oriented and suggesting some ideas which could kind of kickstart the economy. And you're right, the government did its best. Mr. Sreenivasan, one aspect that we don't compliment the government is that it was able to feed people, at the bottom of the pyramid. So a lot of social unrest was avoided because the basic needs, which is food safety, were met. So we have to compliment the government on that. Sometimes we are too critical of the government without realizing what the government deals with and how it functions. So I would say they've done reasonably well, given the unknown nature of the problem, as you rightly said. I want to ask you my last two questions before I bring in audience questions, and one of my senior editorial colleagues, Abhishek, wants to ask you a question. My penultimate question to you. If there was advice you had to give to people on this broadcast, people who would read your interview in the magazine and on the site, what would that advice be?
I think 2-3 things. One is just switch on the positivity button at all points in time. Avoid getting too swayed by all the negative news, and today there is a bunch of it, and we have a plethora of channels and social media feeding you content which can bias you. Try and shut yourself away from that. Second, I go back to a physics lesson that one of my bosses taught me many years ago, of the bumblebee. And according to the wingspan of the bumblebee, it cannot fly. The laws of aerodynamics suggest that the wingspan is too short. But the good news is the bumblebee doesn't know physics, so it flaps its wings and it flies. Yeah. So that theory of being positive, just putting yourself in the spot and just say you can do it, can help navigate all this extreme period that we are facing. And hopefully we'll come out just better, not because we knew better, but we tried better.
Beautiful. I love the analogy and I love the choice of word. My last question to you. Last week MS Dhoni retired. He announced his retirement. First, I want to ask you, who's your favorite cricketer?
Yeah, I think it would be Rahul Dravid as an all-time fan. And Dhoni, I think, for the characteristics he's displayed over the years. Yes, Sachin, Virat are all top quality and we've learned a lot. But these two gentlemen have a more enduring learning. One by his extraordinarily sort of native leadership, that is Dhoni. And Dravid for just everything that I believe in is what I see in him. Or everything I learned as leadership is something that I see in him.
Beautiful. And what is it that you learned from Rahul Dravid? If you can expand on that.
Many people tell me, give me one characteristic as a leader. I've been fortunate to do this job for 10 years as a leader, which in our industry is not easy, as you know. I think the thing is endurance. Head down, just take the balls as it comes and have the courage to stay the course. And not too flashy. Okay, he's had his moments. And I think endurance, persistence, dig in, as I say, just dig in.
And down to earth, and ethical, and clean in his personal life, in the way he conducts himself, the way he's dealt with conflicts of interest when positions have come to him. And, he's a great role model for anyone.
Absolutely.
I remember I was at the Bangalore airport once, and he was in the queue. This was 10 years back. So, he was in the queue like somebody else. There was no airs about it. There was no, look at me, I'm Rahul Dravid. Look at me.
This exactly in the same Bangalore airport, 4 years back or 5 years back, at the Hatti Coffee stall. The brother came here just like you and I was buying a coffee. Right? And
what about Dhoni? What do you think we in the corporate India can learn from Mahendra Singh Dhoni?
I think he's able to mask his emotions, just keep the cool. It's not like he doesn't get flustered. It's not like he doesn't get agitated. I'm sure he does, but he's able to keep it and keep the flock together, give energy to the team. Separately, I'll share with you, not now, what I had written 9.5 years back, immediately after India won the World Cup. Yesterday, I dug out that article. I was quite excited to read it. I'll share that with you separately.
Beautiful. I would say he leads from example. He exemplifies that you can continue to do well for a long period of time in all formats. in all parameters of performance, and it is important to reinvent yourself every now and then. So he did do some unique thing. At this point, let me get in Abhishek. Abhishek, please go ahead and ask your question to Mr. Sreenivasan.
Hello, sir, am I audible?
Yes, Abhishek.
Yeah. Sir, before I ask my question, I would like to add to what you're saying. Sir, Rahul Dravid flourished under Saurav Ganguly's leadership. He actually encouraged everybody. He was a dynamic leader. So, Saurav Ganguly also made a prominent role in grooming a lot of cricketers. So, this is my view.
Mr. Sreenivasan, I want to tell you one thing about Abhishek. He writes beautifully. His stories get a lot of traffic. But he has one bias. He brings Bengal in everything he does. So he's just given the credit for Rahul Dravid's success to Saurav Ganguly. You just saw that. That's on screen. I'm not making that up.
No, Annurag, even if you had not mentioned, I was going to say, are you from Calcutta?
Yes, I am, sir. I am. I'm proud to be from that city, sir.
Abhishek, even I have a very soft corner to Calcutta. I studied there for 2 years, and my wife is from there, so we love that place. So
you mean I am Calcutta?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Okay. Then you would have had the flavor of Durga Puja, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now let me go to the question. Sir, our Honorable Prime Minister harps on MSMEs and startups as one of the future employment generators and biggest contributors to India's $1 trillion economy. So what do we see from the banking industry doing for them? What kind of hand-holding activities do your industry and your company do for MSMEs, startups, and all going forward? Because they are going to create jobs. They would be the wealth churners. So your thoughts, sir. And do you buy the point of the government that startups and MSMEs are the future of this economy?
It is an unarguable fact. See, nobody became a big company without starting, right? So we are now saying, you just think about it. From the time Adam and Eve, businesses have started small and grown. So MSME is a new coinage. We are now giving it labels. Everything starts like that and moves. It's not something that you can argue. It's a fact, right? The issue is, do they get access to formal finance from banks or financial institutions? And are they getting nurtured? And that's the part that's getting worked on. And I think as more and more people adapt and the regulations in the country or the ecosystem in the country is enabling and the disciplines are coming in, banks are going to be the first to go and do lending. Take any bank, ours or some of the good banks, more than 40-50% of the client base are small businesses, right? So it is not that we are shying away from them. The problem is when we are dealing with public money, we are also obliged to make sure that we are lending it responsibly. I know there will always be argument that you have done something wrong, but we have to lend it responsibly. Now, if the borrower doesn't have records, doesn't have financial statements to substantiate, doesn't have assets to back it, doesn't have records to substantiate that they are a bona fide business, then it will be a misgovernance by banks to go out and throw the money there. That said, the good news, as India gets more and more digital, as India gets more and more structured and organized, for sure this segment will get all the support it deserves. One, more recently you've seen even startups are being considered as priority sector lending. So we are more than happy as banks, and as a federal bank, we launched the first startup fund about 6 years back, to encourage these kind of very small, not young in age, young in business startup who are setting up stuff, and we've funded them or we've helped them in some form or other. So you will see this scale up, and in the pandemic-led world, this is going to become a real, because ideas for the new world have to come from people who have no baggage. Like I think Annurag was saying, out of pain arises a lot of solutions. Right? So you are going to see these things coming, and we as a bank and we as a banking industry will be only foolish not to participate in this. And like everything else, the past may mean very little in the way forward. So as things get more digital, as things get more organized, which it is, unfortunately or fortunately it's going to happen that you will see much more support.
Fantastic. Thank you, Abhishek. There are a couple of questions. There are 6 questions. And for most part of the webinar, we've had about 180 people logging in. Even at the fag end, we have 160. This is just on the Zoom chat. We have another 500-600 on the FB link. So about 800 people today who has, and it's, the beauty about video is that the life of content is longer and then it gets into the magazine. Boni Joseph is asking, what are the skills that Federal Bank demands from the candidates in their upcoming job openings? And let me make it a little larger. What are the new skills that the pandemic has made sure we must add in all professions?
I think if you say to look through the lens of pandemic, the skill that all of us need to have, and if you don't have to sharpen or work on, is an ability to deal with ambiguity. Because nothing is anything like you read before, learned before. So you have to be literally on your toes. But an overriding characteristics that is, I believe, over many years when you recruit is will over skill. Right?
I love it. Will over skill.
Which is what we've been pushing for. I'm not saying that always successfully, but if people have that attitude and the will, today skill can be bought. If you and I don't know, Google knows. Right? So there's nothing that today is a preserve of a few. But attitude and mindset is yours. So I think will over skill, but in the near term, it's uncertainty dealing with uncertainty.
Fantastic. Dealing with uncertainty, will over skill. Mr. Sreenivasan, I call it PhD. Like I have permanent head damage, PhD, but I call it passion, hunger, and desire. Because you have to have that. And you're so right. If you can deal with uncertainty, give it your best, and believe in a higher universe, then magic happens. That's what I believe. Ritesh Jain is asking, what are the specific actions Federal Bank is taking to grow the fee income, and how has COVID impacted those plans?
This looks like an investor asking the question.
And he goes on to say, and how does one grab this opportunity? So you're right, he is an investor.
No, I think if I understood the question, what are we doing about fee income, right? I mean, that's the thing. See, the whole, I mentioned right up front, the concept of bespokeization. Right? People are looking, particularly the little more economically well-to-do in this phase, are looking for very personalized outcomes and are looking for solutions that are suiting their stage and need of life. Which is always true, but it's getting sharpened in this period. So I think the more we reach out and the more we do stuff for them tailored, there are opportunities to produce solutions which meet their needs and they pay a fee for them. So I think the fee income is going to be born out of the more personalization and bespokeization, which is what we are working on. And they are varied from a retail individual to a corporate. The solutions vary. So does the fee structure. In India, there are, as it is globally, there are 2 types of fee income that any institution earns. One is the penal fees, and the other is the privilege fees. Penal is if you use the ATM more than 4 times, I'll pay you. If you bounce your check, you'll have to pay me. So that's more regulatory permitted penal fee. But the real is the privilege. You get a service, you pay for it. So our focus is to develop the privilege fees related activities and keep giving solutions which are bespoke.
Beautiful. Artika Shanmugam is asking, hi sir, when will be the next batch of hirees hired? Second, Renoy KJ is asking, sir, you spoke about going digital and reaching out to the customers at their place. Are you adopting new technologies like cloud computing, RPA? I'm sure he is, but if he wants to, he did allude to the fact that technology in banking is making a huge difference, and they early on took on experiment, even before COVID, to go to the customer's place because gold is a physical asset.
The big thing we've done, Annurag, through this period, which I'm quite happy with, something called Fed Swagat, and the only bank that has launched it, is today Mr. Batra wants to go to a branch of a bank for any reason. He would be nervous to go and get caught in a crowd and be waiting in a queue or disadvantaged. We have a mobile app capability. You just log in from wherever you are. You say, I want to come to the office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Give me a slot. So you get a pre-assigned slot, just like how you do your passport. You don't walk into a passport office unscheduled. You go in with an appointment, get your stuff and get out. So we've launched that capability about a month and a half back, literally in the pandemic. The idea born in the pandemic, idea executed in the pandemic. We're now doing, I think, well over 1,500 logins a day. That many people, 1,500 logins a day. People are taking appointments and coming to the branch. So it serves everybody. Branch feels reassured that there is an appointment and service is given. Client feels reassured that he can go at a particular slot, get his service in and out of it. And we think over time this may become a practice in the market.
Beautiful. Mr. AGV Narayanan is asking, dear sir, thanks for your insights. Consolidation in banking industry has already started happening. Suddenly big has become beautiful in banking. How do you see the industry 10 to 15 years down the line?
See, these are things that keep ebbing and waning. You will find for a period this whole consolidation space will come, and lots of talk about few big banks, and then there will be another phase because you need more micro solutions. There will again be a bunch of solutions that will come localized. But I think in the new digital era, big and small may lose its meaning. It's how digital, how less digital that will start making the sense. So I think the point may not be around consolidation as we see it today. Today we are talking of 20 becoming 12. But 5 years out, 10 years out, 15 years out, this conversation will change. The narrative will change. Is how digital or how less digital? How it is self or how it is not self? And again, we look at through the lens of individuals or institutions. If it's a large corporate, they may deal with it differently. If it's a Shyam Sreenivasan or Annurag Batra or X or Y, they will deal with it differently. So I think the narrative, the conversation will change substantially over the years in terms of banking. Expectations will change. More people are going to believe that everything can be done on a device, whether it is this or 5 years from now, this device may disappear, some other device will come. So it will change. A consolidation as we know it today is very likely. There will be a few very, very big institutions, but who's to say they may not again disaggregate 10 years out? I don't know. There will be many digital small micro banks, or they will all be spin-offs from this.
Okay, beautiful. Last question from Shavik Ray. He's plugging his product, but I will not take that. You got to advertise with us for that. Markets till recently were the economic barometer for the economy. Has that empirical approach changed? Markets are probably now the barometer for economic resilience. It's like a complicated question.
So we'll let that pass.
Yes, I have asked it. There are comments. Mr. Vijay Advani saying, dear Mr. Shyam Sreenivasan, a very insightful presentation. Mr. Harshvardhan wants your article that you wrote on Dhoni. Vipin Williams says, thank you very much, Mr. Sreenivasan, for another, and he thanks me, but he goes on to say that he enjoyed it. There is a comment from someone from your alumni, from Mr. Ananta Raman Narayanan. He says, it was a beautiful discussion, and our alumnus from RECT/NIITT has really done a very good job at answering all the questions. So that's it. I think Manish says, great insight. This will have to help us to remain focused. Vivek Deep is asking, there are more questions coming. Johnny Chamani is asking, what's the opportunity Federal Bank looks forward to in the post-COVID boom, given there will be a boom in business and economy? I think he's already answered that. Vivek Deep says, given the inflation is growing, are we out of low interest rate and high rates both for depositors and asset clients will be back? Manvendra Singh, how will Federal Bank respond and control the probable credit deterioration that may come after the moratorium period that ends in August 2020? Sanjay Mittal asked, very happy to see you live after our last meeting in Kolkata. What is your advice for your customers like us involved in EXIM business during the pandemic? These are the kind of questions coming. You can take anything. And last question, from Ravi Thota. How does the bank plan to grow the insurance business, which is now fully in its hands for banker insurance with IDBI scaling down due to LIC?
Quite a range, Anurag. I think what we will do is if you will send that across to our office, I'll get it responded to the individuals. But I think the general point is, since we kept this conversation quite generic and around leadership in this time, I'll try to refrain from specific answers. But my message to myself, to the team, and to the wider group which cares to hear is just, this is an unfortunate reality. None of us wanted it, but we've been served this. So we have to live through this with the most positive mindset we can, and just stay as fit as possible to deal with this. Learn from sport, put our head down, deal with these tough hours. We'll get a chance to hit the sixers, if not now, in a few months. And then we are fit enough to make those runs.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mr. Sreenivasan, for this engaging conversation. And we wish you luck in your role as the opening batsman and the captain of the Federal Bank. I'm sure you'll lead the team very well, and you will do a 3-0 series win, so to say, in what you do. I've enjoyed the conversation. So have all the colleagues who tuned in. We've got about 16 questions and about 5 comments. That tells you the kind of level of engagement from the audience. So we're grateful to you, Mr. Sreenivasan, and we look forward to having a conversation soon again with you. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Anurag, and it was wonderful chatting you up, and I wish everybody the best and stay safe. Thank you very much. Thank you.